How to survive the Vietnam War, huh? I mean, was there a surefire way on how to survive it? I think you just got if you survived, I think you just got lucky. To be completely honest, fucking 60,000 soldiers died in the Vietnam War, at least on our end anyway. Maybe even more. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't really think there was a surefire way. I think if you survived, you got lucky. That was it. All right, how to survive the Vietnam War? Fucking aim high. Aim high and pull the trigger before they do. But even then, it's Vietnam. You got the jungle. You got booby traps. Those fucking Viet Cong were excellent at making booby traps for American troops. And American troops got fucked up in those booby traps, especially in the dense ass wilderness of Vietnam.
How to survive the Vietnam War, the 1960s. So it's the mid-1960s and you were a recruit who has just arrived in Vietnam. The country's involved in a bloody and intense civil war. So how do you survive this experience? Well, firstly, the best way to survive the Vietnam War was to simply not be in it in the first place. And the easiest way to do that was not to be an
Is to not get drafted. Yeah, not to be in America.
American, as the vast majority of armed forces deployed there at the time were United States servicemen. While it is true that other nations like Australia, Thailand, and the Philippines were involved in the conflict as part of an anti-communist alliance, their numbers, however, were relatively low in comparison to America's military commitment. By the end of the war, America's commitment to the Vietnam War would see nearly 3 million servicemen involved, a truly massive scale. Another way to survive the Vietnam War was to not be drafted. This would have been a limited option, however, as conscription was still in place in America, a legacy from World War II. Even legends like
You chop your foot off. That's it. But which I'm assuming. What are the ways you could have gotten out of the draft back then? You chop your foot off, chop your hand off. Or if I don't know if this was the case for Vietnam, but I think it was the case for like the World Wars. If you were the last living male of your family, you wouldn't get drafted simply just so that your family name could continue. I don't know which war that was from though, or maybe it was for both World Wars. I can't fucking remember, but yeah, chopping your foot off or just like leaving the country. And that was like the only way to dodge it, really, for the most part.
U.S. singer Elvis Presley were unable to avoid being conscripted, but he was posted to the safety of Western Europe just as the U.S. military was starting to get involved in the Vietnam conflict. One option to avoid being conscripted could have been to flee to a neutral country.
Yeah.
It would, however, mean having to leave friends and family and risk being labeled as a draft dodger for the rest of your life. So if you did find yourself in the U.S. military and posted to the conflict in Vietnam, how did you reduce the chance of not becoming one of the 58,148 who were killed in the conflict, or one of the
Yeah, I was right, bro. I said 60,000, but to be completely honest, I think that number is a tad bit higher. Like barely. He said 58,000 and some change. I think it was like 60 plus, but not over 70. There's some wiggle room there for the casualty count.
the 304,000?
Only son in your family and or a full-time college student and you didn't get drafted? I didn't know that about the college student at all. I thought I knew about the only son thing, but I didn't know about the being if you were a college. I didn't know that at all.
That were wounded in combat. You are in Vietnam, the mid-1960s. Depending on which branch of the U.S. Armed Forces you served, your chances of surviving the Vietnam War
Slim.
is varied. You're in the U.S. Navy. For example,
Your survival rate in the U.S. Navy was probably way higher than your survival rate of the Army, and you were troops on ground. I feel like the highest survival rate probably would have been the Navy, and then the second highest survival rate would have been probably the Air Force. The lowest survival rate was probably the Marines. and then the Army. Probably. But correct me if I'm wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think that I don't know who had the most casualties, Marines or Army, but I know that Marines and Army had very high casualty rates. Whereas opposed, I don't really feel like Navy and Air Force. I mean, yeah, they probably still had casualties, but not. I don't really think it was on the same scale as Army and Marines. Marines probably taking the brunt of that hit.
If you're in the Navy, the odds are in your favor of surviving. This is due to the fact that the enemy's Navy consisted of a few small armed vessels and a handful of fast attack torpedo boats compared to the might of the U.S. naval fleet.
Yeah.
However, naval aviators do not have it easy, as they were expected to carry out bombing raids over North Vietnam, as well as support the U.S. Army and Marine ground offensives. There is also the risk of deadly accidents due to the high level of combat readiness required during the war. One of the most tragic examples of this happened in 1967 involving the USS Forrestal CV-59 supercarrier. The ship was on operational deployment in the Gulf of Tonkin off the coast of North Vietnam when an F-4B Phantom was taxiing on the deck of the carrier. An electrical malfunction caused an unguided rocket on the jet to fire prematurely.
Damn.
The rocket struck a nearby stationary A-4 Skyhawk, and in the ensuing fire engulfed a large part of the ship, resulting in 134 men killed and 61 aircraft destroyed.
That fucking sucks, bro. Ugh. If I'm gonna go to combat, I would like to die in combat, not because of an accident that happened that wasn't even combat related. That's rough. That's unfortunate.
Enlisted is the free.
It's like I'd rather get shot by the enemy than fucking accidentally get shot by my homie because of friendly fire or on some fratricide type shit. You know what I'm saying? Like that just feels bad. Like they come to your doorstep talking about, "Ma'am, your son has perished in combat. How did he die?" His homie shot him in the back on accident. The fuck? Right?
You're in the U.S. Air Force. Joining the United States Air Force, despite its new generation of high-tech weaponry, such as the F-105 Thunder Chiefs armed with precision-guided bombs and heat-seeking missiles, is a much riskier choice. While innovations such as the ejector seats and widespread use of rescue helicopters help keep casualties down, being part of a flight crew is a hazardous and demanding role. The Air Force carry out over 5 million missions during the conflict.
And it would be scary for the Air Force. You're in one of these planes and you get shot down and you land somewhere behind enemy lines. That's terrifying. That's more terrifying than simply just being on the ground as an army troop or a Marine. Because at least you got your battle buddies. At least you got your homies. At least you got someone to watch your back. You're in the air, you're a pilot and you get shot down and you land behind enemy lines or you land in some fucked up spot. That is just you, your wit, and determination and will to survive, really. And that can't be fun.
More bombs than in all of World War II. The Air
I miss what he said here.
Force and demanding role. The Air Force carry out over 5 million missions during the conflict, dropping more bombs than in all of World War II.
That's fucking nuts. I did not know that tidbit of information either. They dropped more bombs in Vietnam than in both world wars. That's fucking crazy. That's a lot of fucking ordnance.
Is a hazardous and demanding role. The Air Force carry out over 5 million missions during the conflict, dropping more bombs than in all of World War II.
Oh, just World War II, not both world wars. All right.
Air Force lost around 6,000 pilots and crewmen, along with a staggering 2,251 U.S. aircraft.
How many aircraft? Hold on.
Crewmen, along with a staggering 2,251 U.S. aircraft.
Damn.
This is the equivalent to the destruction of the combined air forces of the United Kingdom, Germany, the Netherlands, Norway, Portugal, and Canada of today.
Holy Jesus. So what we lost in Vietnam as far as our Air Force capabilities would have wiped out several fucking countries, would have rendered them useless. But It's America, bro, and we spend all of the money on fucking defense. How much money? All of it. There is no number. There is no specific number. How much money do we spend? All of it on fucking defense. So we took that hit and still had and still stayed in the fight. So that's what makes us so powerful, man. Our ability to get hit and still be able to fight. Really. Whereas in some other countries, they get hit hard, that's it. That wave the white flag.
You're in the U.S. Marines or U.S. Army.
This right here is where it gets fucking dicey.
The real burden of the war was carried by the ground forces.
Yes.
It was truly a down and dirty war, fought at close range in the jungle by the common U.S. soldier. So how did you survive the Vietnam War if you were an everyday GI?
I want to say the answer to that is you just got lucky enough to survive. Like I said at the beginning of the video, I don't think there was any set way. Especially if you're a ground troop. You just got lucky. That's it. Or you were just a fucking badass like Roy Benavidez and you just fucking went through this wilderness just fucking eliminating everyone. You fucking you unlocked a fucking nuke, man. You were on a 20 kill streak. Unless you're that guy, you really did have to get lucky to survive this.
Firstly, you should always keep your weapon clean from the dirt and muck of the jungle. In your hands is the newly introduced M16 assault rifle, which carries false claims of never needing to be cleaned.
Bullshit. And in a jungle, no less? Who the hell said that?
If it isn't cleaned, it will become prone to jamming, which can potentially be deadly in the middle of a firefight. Beware of booby traps. These are the weapons of choice by the North Vietnamese Army and the Viet Cong.
Yes.
Traps included concealed pits full of punji sticks. These are sharp.
Not to mention sickness, bro. You're in the jungle. There's a whole bunch of shit in that damn country that is not what probably is, but just in like very isolated places in America. But sickness, man, illness. You have an open wound or something, infection, shit like that, bro. Yeah, but quite a few soldiers probably succumbed. I don't, whatever. They probably died to that shit too.
Sharpened bamboo stakes smeared with urine or feces in order to infect anyone who was unlucky enough to fall into a pit. Also popular are tripwires.
Yeah, dude, malaria, all kinds of shit.
The most deadly and dramatic of these is the swinging mace. This is triggered by a tripwire, which will cause a large metal or wooden ball with numerous spikes embedded in it to swing down from a nearby tree, impaling the unsuspecting victim.
Yeah.
If you're an officer, you should not highlight that fact while you're on the front line.
No,
it's one of the
because they're gonna target you.
Many enemy snipers.
That's why you don't, and we still did this when we deployed. That's why whenever you're out in the field, you don't salute your officer. And your officer shouldn't even wear rank. You already know he's your officer. You don't need that rank to identify him. You know who he is. You don't salute this motherfucker and you don't wear rank. Because officers get targeted. Chain of command gets targeted.
Snipers will go out of their way to target you and make you their next victim. The North Vietnamese often use the Russian Mosin Nagant M44 rifle that has a range in excess of 2,500 feet. One famous Viet Cong sniper moving around.
However, when there is a caveat to what he said about the weapons cleaning. I know that when I was deployed, I experienced this. And if you've ever served in the military, you ever went to combat, you ever fired your weapon, maybe you know what I'm talking about, maybe you don't. But there was a few times where I cleaned my weapon. And the very first time that I shot it after cleaning it, it jammed. It was completely fine and worked perfect. No jams, no malfunctions, no nothing. But the second I cleaned it, the very next time I fired it, jammed. So it was very weird, man. Sometimes I would go long periods of time without cleaning my weapon. Sometimes I would clean it. Sometimes my squad leader would get on my ass, like, clean your weapon. And I'm just like, man, last time I cleaned my weapon, it jammed. Call me superstitious or whatever, but it was just one of those things, man. It was like a little gray area. Like maybe I clean it, maybe I don't. But to suggest that it doesn't need to be cleaned, period, and it'll shoot regardless, that's kind of asinine.
Is a woman simply known as the Apache, who is known for her sadistic and ruthless nature. She rarely ever misses her target.
Oh shit.
It's not just the enemy that present a danger. Deadly animals and life-threatening diseases are also present on the
The
battlefield.
fucking jungle, dog.
Thankfully, death from disease and animal attacks in the Vietnam War is nowhere near as lethal as in previous wars.
It'll still slow down your group though. It will.
Malarial mosquitoes, leeches,
And it'll definitely hinder your ability to perform.
ticks, fire ants, and deadly snakes like the king cobra and various types of pit
Because I know when I was in Afghanistan, I had curry, and I was shitting and throwing up uncontrollably. I couldn't even go on mission. I could barely even stand. I was on the verge of telling my squad leader to just take my weapon away because I was this close to just ending it because, like, I was so sick. I felt so bad. Like, I wanted to die, dude.
vipers are everywhere. In fact, Vietnam is home to no less than 37 different types of poisonous snakes. Crocodiles and venomous spiders will also constantly make you watch where you step.
Damn.
There is even the South Asian giant centipede, which is a highly aggressive, fast-moving creature with a bite like a bee sting. And to make matters worse, there are a whole host of nasty tropical diseases you can get that are mostly insect or tick-borne, like tuberculosis, dengue fever, and typhus, just to name just a few.
Jesus.
With the use of antibiotics and other medicines, survivability from these diseases are high. As we saw, the
Still a fucking nuisance, though.
Viet Cong are reluctant to engage in conventional warfare. But if you're in a firefight with the enemy and are hit, being wounded is not the death sentence it used to be. 100 years before in the American Civil War, to be wounded meant more often than not that you would die to shock or infection. But in Vietnam, if you were seen by a field medic or be medevaced to a nearby hospital in time, you have a high chance of surviving the ordeal of being injured in combat. Death from disease and injury in the Vietnam War was nowhere near as lethal as in previous wars. Swift medical attention and the use of antibiotics, sterile equipment, and anesthetics ensured the vast majority of GIs survived when wounded. Say no to drugs. In Vietnam, illegal drugs such as illicit drugs like marijuana, opium, LSD, cocaine, morphine, heroin, and psychedelic magic mushrooms.
I mean, hell, man. Let's be honest here. War is hell, and I'm in hell right now, and my girlfriend's back at home, probably cheating on me, and I just need to blow off some steam. Where's the weed? I don't blame them for this, man. Vietnam was a crazy war, and the 60s were a crazy time. Obviously, I wouldn't have recommended taking hallucinogenics, but you get done with a mission, you're stressed the fuck out, your anxiety is through the stratosphere. Yeah, man, roll up a fucking doobie. Holy shit, that was nuts.
Mushrooms are relatively inexpensive and widely available to American soldiers. In some combat units, up to 80% of men are casual or habitual drug users and use them to increase performance in the field, something that may cause.
I mean, cocaine, maybe, but opium? I don't know how good you're performing on opium, man. And not to mention, oh, dude, it's just I wonder how much the friendly fire rate went up because of drugs and because of alcohol and yeah, all that shit. And I really wish I could have carried a pack of cigarettes in my cat eyes on my Kevlar when I was deployed, but nah. We had to be professional and all that stupid shit.
Overconfidence in combat. Many soldiers became addicted to drugs, which carried on into their lives when they got back home. By the end of the Vietnam War, the black market was flooded with cheap cocaine and heroin from neighboring Cambodia. So, you survived against the enemy in combat and their booby traps, the dangerous wildlife of Vietnam.
Yep, you survive all this just to come back to America and get spit on by a fucking college kid. Fucking joke, right? Jesus.
and its tropical diseases. And now your tour of duty is over. Return home and readjust.
To get called a baby killer and get spit on and get fucking and not even get appreciated for what the fuck you just did. Fun, right? Super cool.
From combat to civilian life as a Vietnam War veteran.
That's why, bro, let me catch anyone being disrespectful to a goddamn Vietnam veteran. I'll beat your ass for him. I will fight you for him. I don't even care if I lose the fight. I'm initiating a fucking scuffle. Let me catch you. Let me catch you being disrespectful to a Vietnam veteran. I couldn't have lived in that time, bro. Had I seen that, I would have lost my goddamn mind. And it was even worse for the fucking for the African Americans that served in Vietnam. Not only did they get fucking spit on and called a baby killer because of their service, but people were also racist against them. So it was even worse for them too. It's like, bro, let me catch you. I'm so glad I didn't have to witness that and see that. That shit would have drove me fucking mad. It would have drove me mad, bro. And let me have served in Vietnam and then come back and get treated like that, I would have lost all military bearing. I would have lost all military bearing and I would have beat the fuck out of you, dog. Like, there's no way. There is no way. You don't have to fucking worship me, but you're not gonna treat me like shit either. Man, getting mad just thinking about it. There's no fucking way. Imagine basic training for the Vietnam War. I don't have to imagine it. I saw it in the movie Full Metal Jacket. They don't train troops like that anymore. They give them goddamn stress cards and don't yell at them. Remove shark attacks, slowly pussifying the goddamn armed forces. Your grandfather is a Vietnam Marine veteran. TSV, if he's still alive, thank him profusely for his service. And tell him that I said that there is no way that I could have ever walked a mile in his shoes, because there's absolutely no way. Like, I look at that conflict, and then I look at the conflict that I fought in, leaps and bounds different. It's a completely, it's not even a different world, bro. It's a completely different fucking universe, man. Like, I just don't think I could have done it. I say that though, but I mean, maybe. It's funny because I've had conversations with Vietnam veterans before, and I tell them that I'm like, there's no way I could have done what you did. And then their response to me is, fuck, man, there's no way I could have done what you did. At least we know what we were shooting at. You're shooting at fucking ghosts. You're looking for fucking Casper, bro. And everyone looks the same. There's no uniform. You don't even know who you're fighting. You don't even know who's gonna shoot at you. You don't even know who you're shooting at. Motherfuckers hiding in caves. You're just going out there and waiting to get shot at. Waiting to get blown up. I couldn't have done that. And I'm just like, I mean, when you put it that way, I mean, I suppose, but still, at the same time, like that Vietnam War was fucking, that was crazy.